This is 2OF Entertainment.
And we are back. I, of course, have lost all hearings, which is what normally... It's going to be one of those days, and I know that already. We started off going well. No. Oh, still can't hear anything. So, shall I just leave you to introduce the show, Paul? Is that the easiest thing to do? Let me just jump off, and you can get and you can get Cam on, okay?
So interact with that subject matter in a personal way. And I find that Cam does that. He's a realistic watercolor painter. A lot of his imagery, or most of his imagery, is almost still life, but very portrait-like in nature. And he's doing works that are, I guess we'll call them they're of the forest, but more, I guess, snippets of the forest. I mean, we're going to take a real good close-up at a look at birch trees and birch bark and some of the things of how to render some of these things that are very difficult for some people, but he has this ability to bring life back into that older woods and things that are decaying and some of the beauty that's found in that subject matter. And I'm gonna get David to bring Cam into the show. Yeah. There you go, Cam. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Yeah. Well, you know what? We had a good experience. Like the other day, we talked about some of your work, and I'm quite. We'll just talk a little bit about your background a little bit and your art journey a little bit, I guess, as we call it. Just where you came from, your background, and up to date a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit where you started and where you picked up this great ability to paint watercolor?
Well, thanks, Paul. My first degree at university was a Bachelor of Arts at the University of Saskatchewan, and I majored in visual arts. And I was very fortunate. I had a teacher mentor, Noni Malcaster. And I took several classes from Noni, and then I ended up in architecture initially, and then I switched over to landscape architecture. I did have the experience of going to Japan for 2 years, and I fell in love with Japanese gardens, and then I guess I didn't really pick up painting again until about 2000. And I went up to Kenderdine Campus at Emma Lake, and I took a class from Dagan Lindner, painting Fairy Island. And it was there that I started painting birch trees. And so, yeah, that's sort of my background.
You're great. A quick run up to the Fairy Island. It's a beautiful, very beautiful country up there. I had a week studio time up in that area, actually at the same camp, out in the mid 80s. And, it is quite invigorating for somebody that likes to be in the woods where you can you really can feel it. You can smell it. You can the moss and the, there is some of the, like you said, there's quite a few birch trees is quite prevalent there. What is it about the birch tree that enamored you? I guess I'll call the word that part.
Well, that's a good question, Paul. When I first went to Ferry Island, most people stayed around Ernie Lindner's old studio, and I decided, no, I'm going to go into the forest. And I looked around, and there were these two birch trees that really caught my eye. And so, that was my first experience painting birch in the forest. It was a bit of a comical scene. Big and Lindner came to look at how my painting was coming, and she walked right past me. I was immersed in my painting. I find it almost meditative. Anyway, she did come back and give me a critique. But what draws me to birch is the color and the shapes, the forms. If you really look closely, there's so much color. And there's
I'm going to get David to start our first image up so people can, while you talk about it. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so this was actually the first painting I did of birch trees, and that was done on Ferry Island at Emma Lake. And I called this couple. It's couple of birch trees, and it looks like they're interacting with each other.
Well, exactly. That's what I was just going to say. I said they look like there's a yin and yang. Like they've been around together for quite a while. They're getting to understand and know each other's space. They almost like portraits, Cam. Like they feel like they're very individual. They're unique. Each birch tree is. Do you look at it that way?
Very much so. Yeah. I really think the trees have personality. And in fact, I view them as portraits of the trees.
Right. So, do the colors change through the season? Like in the fall, they won't be quite as the moss on the trees, for instance, that they pick up. Is it like I have drawn a few birch trees, but they tend to be all the same time of year. Do you do anything in the winter, or is it mostly just seasonal?
Well, it's mostly seasonal, being watercolor. If you're out in the winter, it would freeze on you. The color does vary, especially based on light. Like during the day, the light is always shifting, and so it's sort of hard to capture the. Do you do early morning light or afternoon light? And that's one of the challenges of plein air is the changing light. It's a bit of a challenge, I guess.
Yeah. So do you find the nemesis being the background? Is that your nemesis, the little bit?
Yes, very much so. And I've struggled with background. Now, I think in a few of my paintings, I have attempted background, mainly just a wash. And I don't find that it really adds much to the painting. And in fact, just leaving the paper color, it really makes the trees sort of sculptural.
There's a good word. That is very much so. Yes, you can see the profiles change. Because of the torn birch and the different things. They're not just a pole.
Right.
When you're looking at things. But we go back to painting in the watercolor in the wintertime. One of the artists was mentioned to me. He said uses vodka instead of water.
Yeah.
you start dipping your brush in and licking your brushes after a while. But but he said use a little bit of vodka in your water. He said that will make it so it doesn't freeze. But it's an investment. You have to look at it that way. That's for the die-hard watercolor painter who wants to paint in zero weather. But it's cumbersome though when you've got mitts and gloves and a snowsuit on almost, where you're trying to, because you're standing or sitting very still, trying to focus on something. You can get pretty cold working outside in the winter.
I'll stay in the studio, thank you.
So do you bring reference material into your studio with you for the winter, or do you work from photos mostly?
Well, both actually. I've got a collection of photos that I can draw on, but I also have brought parts of birch trees back to my studio, and so yeah, both actually.
Yeah. No, I think I've shown a close up here on the right hand side. It's a close up of the top of the birch. These two birches that are connected a little bit, and people can see the beautiful detail that you've been able to accomplish in watercolor. You find that watercolor does the best job of depicting the birch tree for you anyway, other than other medias?
Well, I pretty much stuck with watercolor. I haven't used other media with the birch trees. I did way back when I was a student. So I played around with oils and acrylics, but I really, I know a lot of people find watercolor difficult, but I love watercolor, and you have to start with light and gradually work into dark. And if you make it too dark, too bad. It's very difficult to lift pigment off the paper after you've applied it. So it's a layering process for me, where I start very light and then very gradually make it dark.
Yeah, it's like playing with Photoshop. You just kind of a little bit at a time to get it a little bit. Yours is the old version of Photoshop. That's what
I guess. Yeah.
With watercolors. Yeah, they can get muddy very quickly. If you're mixing the raw pigments that have multiple colors in each color. So in other words, trying to work with purer color, and like you said, learning your glazings to acquire those colors. And one color laid over the other one. But, I mean, it's kind of analogous palette you have, because the colors are all within the same family. They're not just injection of yellow and a punch of blue and a punch of this just to give drama to them. They have drama in themselves in a monochromatic way. There's still lots of punch. You can see in the torn part of the birch, there's all the little entrails and things, the details that have gone into the curls of the paper. And I just find with watercolor, the papers feel light. Like the paper that comes off of the tree has a very light feeling and very thin feeling. That what is the nature of the birch? You feel like like peeling an onion. It just has those the skins.
I guess that's why it's called paper birch.
That is called a paper birch for sure. Yeah, but I become I think a tree specialist in understanding about trees. So you painted poplar trees that they have a unique look to them, but the paper birch tends to be what you tend to. We're going to show people a number of portraits over this series here that we're going to show here shortly here, and show this one here. Now, is this a birch as well? But
this is spruce. I did a series of wind fallen spruce, and this again was on Ferry Island. I did a couple of studies, and then I played around with the form, and so this is a large painting, I guess around 20 by 30 inches. So yeah, it took, no, I don't punch a clock when I paint, but I'm going to guess this probably took around 500 hours. And there's a lot of detail in this, but yeah, there's a series of and some of these I did in the forest, and this guy I did the studies in the forest and then worked from photograph loosely in the studio.
Yeah, you into, I think, like you said before, you get into a meditative state of painting and going down certain trails and valleys and building that texture up from a reference. It's great that you don't follow the reference 100%, but it's almost impossible anyway when you start painting all those intricacies that make up that decay. It's a beauty in itself, but it's really hard to just follow exactly from a photograph. I mean, at a certain point, you have to do your own thing. Would you say one of your mentors is Ernie Lindner, who was Ernest Lindner?
Well, again, that's a good question. I was not really familiar with Ernie's work when I started painting birch trees. And I deliberately avoided looking at Ernie's work. I didn't want to be accused of copying Ernie's work. And it was only when, I've been painting up at Kenderdine Campus probably for about 10 years. And I finally read the book about Ernie. And I took a very close look at some of his paintings. It's interesting, both Ernie and I have problems dealing with background. So it was a bit, it was enlightening to hear that Ernie suffered from the same problem that I do. What do you do with the background? He tend to fill the background. I tend to leave it blank, and deliberately so. Again, and this is a good example right here of no background. And I don't think adding background to this painting would add to it. Again, it's very sculptural in its form. And I don't think background would really suit this.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful piece. I think it's something that, people need to, you kind of go look at it and see, can you do this yourself? I think everybody interprets things differently anyway, but it's, the spruce is unique because this one could have been lightning struck or whatever, but they twist when they fall. A lot of times from age, they rot at a certain point, and when they fall, they just kind of twist and fall down. We've had a few at the lake that did the same, and they have a similar look, but there's a nice expression of, it's sort of that cracking feeling that you can get from looking at a piece of work like this. And I appreciate it very much, the skill set to be able to, I guess, bring it to life. I guess part of it, I mean, the life of a tree is short, 100 years maybe, if they're lucky, and then they're down. So I think between wind and lightning, and I guess with our warming climate, that it's affecting everything. Does any of that get into your life a little bit? The concern about the environment, and you
yeah, very much so. And but there's natural things happening as well. Ferry Island had a very strong windstorm a few years ago, and a lot of trees were knocked down by the wind. And that's just part of nature. a lot of the birch on Ferry Island are very old and they're dying off. I do have a concern about Ferry Island. If there's a fire, there's so much kindling on the island. It would be devastating. And that's all natural.
Yeah. Well, deadfall does create a lot of that, and
Yeah.
you can't vacuum it up. I mean, it's at a certain point it has to go back to nature. That's part of that humus and the things that if anybody's been to Ferry Island or Emma Lake area, I mean, you can go in, there's peat moss areas in the woods that are beautiful. You could almost want to just go have a sleep on this. It feels very like literally fairy like. There's a wonderland in itself. When you walk through that, I guess it's a boreal forest initially, but it has coniferous trees within it, I would think as well.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful experience. So that, you get that feeling when you do those walks in the woods, like you get that smell and the bounce on the floor bed when you're walking, and it's not like walking on asphalt. That immerses you into the forest. The feeling. Is that one of the things?
Oh yeah, and that drew me back again and again. I would return to Ferry Island, and you get immersed in the natural environment, and it really, I think, helps me feel like I want to paint.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah, exactly.
You forget about everything else, and yeah.
This one's a really nice play of light in this one. I mean, it's complicated, and it's there's three subjects in this one. You've pretty much filled up the canvas. You don't have to worry about that background very much on this one. You've got there's the three nice. It's a tough design piece, and it's well put together. I really appreciate what you've been able to do with it. They're not all the same texture, and they got some, there's three responses here to three portraits that are living together in an area, either separately or in connection. Can you speak to some of this, like the painting of the lichen on the tree? So one is almost in demise, one's falling apart, and ones are still more alive and living. So there's this relationship of old and new and young in a communal way feeling in this painting to me when I look at this, Cam. So was that some of the things that you saw when you were painting it, or was it just the texture to start with?
This was a very frustrating painting. I tend to work from left to right. So I started with the tree on the left, and I painted it. I mean, I come back and touch it up later, but I painted it, and then I painted the tree in the middle, and it's sort of hiding in the background, if you like. And then I started on the tree on the right, and I started painting it, and I was getting so frustrated because I didn't know where I was going. And so I sort of swore at it for a week or two, and then finally what I ended up doing is turning it upside down. And I finished the tree on the right with the painting upside down, and it worked. But it was so frustrating. I call the painting family, and the AKA the good, the bad, the ugly.
I can hear the music in the background. Yeah, the whistling. Clint Eastwood sound of things. It's great that those I think that's part of the magic of being an artist, that you can go into that other world where, yes, there's frustration, but you're trying to work out the understanding and the relationship of three objects together, which is very lifelike. You're trying to work with things that are, I find works that are really important to me are the ones that respond to me as a human being. I try to put myself personally, whether it's abstract or sculpture or whatever, I try to immerse myself in that work in a person, not so much the way the artist did it, but how I respond to it. And it may not be what everybody else sees. That's fine. Everybody has their opinion, mine is definitely not look at it my way, but I definitely see this as three ages of life. There's the younger, more active, middle, and aging, and it's sort of that response to nature in itself. So I find that it worked out well for you. I mean, really, I'm glad you had the frustration, because it turned into a great painting. And it's hard for an artist to work through that and just walk away from it. But we're always, if there's some inkling there, we tend to go back to it and pick it up. And it's great you turned it upside down. Good resolve. It takes your mind away from those other two objects that you already pre-painted, and you can concentrate on one other one. But I think it's, I guess, a brave thing for an artist to do. Like I've rarely turned a painting upside down unless I'm going to paint over it completely and do another painting on top of the canvas. But I find that unless you're following something, the light shadows switch upside down on you. Like they're not on the underside. If the light's above, the shadow will be below an object, and understanding where the shadows are and the textures. But I think you have good resolve on this one. I think it's a beautiful piece, and it is similar to what Ernie did, but it's different. So good on you to find your own pathway, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I am striving to make my paintings, and I don't want to be heavily influenced by Ernie's work. I mean, I love his work, but I want my paintings to be different from Ernie's.
Yeah. Where do you consider placing signatures on your works? Where do you normally, like, I don't see one on this.
Yeah, I hide them in the painting. I don't like to have, my name or initials. I just use initials, sort of glaringly obvious. I like to bury somewhere in this painting. You'd have to zoom in, but it would have my initials, and it anyway. It's I don't want to distract from my painting with my name.
So do you usually put that information on the back of the paper at some point?
Oh yeah, I'll sign it on the back. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's always good to have that as part of the keepsake for people to have that. Yeah. Let's move on to this one. So this the other thing that is unique about, well, birch and I guess they're aspen or poplar trees. They tend to, as they decay, they have a shelf fungus that these become these clam-like shapes that are piled one on top of the other that can ring a tree. And there's probably 1,000 versions of styles of them. I call them lack of words, but can you give us a little feeling about what attracted you to this subject matter?
Well, it's interesting. One of the names for this fungi is Artis conch. So it's been the subject matter for many painters, and this is actually on a spruce tree.
Okay.
An old spruce tree, and it's been there for many, many, many years. And I was admiring it, and then finally I decided I'm going to paint this, and I did again. I did a couple of studies, played around with the layout of it, and in this case, I decided to put in background because it really sets the context. But I filled the entire paper with the painting right up to the edge. So that's another way that I've dealt with background is, just made it extend right to the edge of the painting of the paper.
Yeah. No, it makes sense to have it attached to that bark of the tree, the context of the, because the fungi they're different on each tree. Like,
oh yeah.
And their relationships that are part of that tree. This is like you said, it's an aging tree, so it's feeding this other life form. Like, that's what I love about watching that. You can see how one is something for the other one, whether it's shelter or food, or it's the next generation of what's happening in the forest. I'm not a botanist by any means, but it tells you the health of the forest. It tells you what's happening when you start seeing things like this. But I love the feeling of them. I mean, they feel very clam-like. They're very. When first time I saw them, I was enamored by them. I said, "Wow, this is so different. It's different than something growing from the ground, because they're attached to something. It's like a lesion of some kind." But are they kind of hard after a while? Do they become quite petrified feeling, or are they still soft?
Oh yeah, no, the older fungi are very firm, I guess you could say, and they develop, I think, more color as they get older. Like,
Okay.
this would be, I don't know how many years old, this particular fungus, but it had, again, if you look at it closely, there are so many different colors in this, similar to the birch trees,
Right. Yeah. There is and there isn't, because you look at them, it feels very warm colors, right, that are in there. When you look at it, we're looking at it smaller as well, looking at it on screen here, but it still gives you a semblance of the relationship that's happening. I mean, the work actually is very abstract in its nature, and realistic at the same time. But so do you look at abstraction when you're designing your shapes and spaces, like when you're putting it together? Is that in?
Well, I certainly play around with the form, to make it do what I want it to do.
Yeah.
So it's not purely representational.
Yeah. No, it's I like the fact that you do that, because I think, just copying something specifically and say, I'm going to paint it exactly like that. It's nice to move something around a little bit in a natural way. I mean, when you're looking at the connection of the two fungi at the top, you're not playing with that too much, because that's how they're connected. But like the cropping on the left and the right, and just leaving it has a feeling of a close-up portrait. Like, it's like, I'm not showing you everything. That's not important. This is what's more important. So artists making those decisions become you. Like that's Ernie would maybe do this differently. Somebody else, I would maybe do this differently. Whoever, like, just looking at it. But I think it's it's a nice response piece in a different way in some of your work. I like it. We're going back to now each one of these ones that we're showing, they're from different birch trees, correct? And different trees, that they're not all from the same one,
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they're different trees, and there's so much color and texture and different forms. I mean, I just love birch trees. I don't like. I'll play around with its form. I like you. I view them as portraits. But with trees, you can play around with with the face, and you can lower the ear below the chin, and you can play around with it. Whereas if it's a human portrait, of course, you typically would leave things where they are. But in the case of the birch trees, I'll like, for instance, the paper birch that's falling off on the right hand side. I'll play around with those a lot in terms of their form, and so yeah, that's one of the beauties of painting trees is you can play around with the face.
Yeah. No, it's like playing with hair, like the curls on a hair, and they can curl in, out, and around, but you almost can see through them, Cam. They still feel very light because they're peeling off in layers, and they have a, rather than, if you did a poplar tree, they're pretty much straight up and down, right? They're smooth edged around, and they've got a few, knot holes and different things that where branches were on, and you can play with those, and the texture has its kind of, well, birch has got these nice little check marks that go up and down the tree.
Yeah.
Which are very distinctive of the birch. And have you ever done any drawings on birch or anything like that at all?
No, I have not.
Because there was a company years ago that indigenous group, and they were peeling birch, and they must have been, they peel. I've got a few pieces, and they had to be 18 inches wide, 18 inches square. And they'd packaged them, and I guess they were selling them at some point. And they're fairly thick but you can peel them off in layers, and you can almost use them for writing on and doing some different types of work with it. Quite a unique thing to play with, but it's they're from the bigger birch trees than these smaller ones.
Right.
And they would peel them back. I mean, our First Nations people used to make canoes and things out of them. I mean, at one time, it was that type of stuff that was reusable in the forest. But I don't know. I was just asking because I don't know how it would receive ink or pigment. I haven't done anything with them yet because you have to deal with the texture of that paper. It kind of curls up on you. You got to, layer it down so that it doesn't want to curl up a little bit. But
no, I don't know. I'm interested to try it now, but I'm quite. I like my paper to be thick, and I use 300-pound paper. It's more forgiving than the lighter paper.
Right.
Like with 300-pound, you can actually play with it in terms of adding and taking color off, actually. So I'll I hate doing it. I'll take a big sheet of 300-pound and cut it into the sizes that I want.
Yeah. I've worked on 300-pound too, and it's very stiff. But you can put a wash on it, and the paper just lays there. It's not going to wrinkle up or curl up on you. And if you don't tape it down onto a board or something. But I know on the thinner papers, you need to, tape it down on a board. Otherwise, it'll pull up on you.
Yeah.
But I think in the old days, I used to use butcher wrap paper tape and wet it and soak the paper and stretch it. And there's all kinds of things that we used to do, a lot of things. But I think a lot of people are working in watercolor blocks now, especially plein air style, just working a watercolor block. And, they tend to be a little smaller. You can get about a half sheet in a watercolor block as being a large one. But watercolor paper is getting so expensive now. But I think it's just what it is. Now, sorry about this. This one's so long and thin. I can't get it any bigger. On a phone, it'll look quite small. But it feels like I'm all. What's different about this one is this one is was it a log horizontal? Is that one?
Yes, yeah. Again, I started this painting on Ferry Island, and it's about, I'm going to guess, around 10 inches high by about 30 inches wide. And it's a log that was decaying in the forest. It had all sorts of things growing on it. And so I was painting it on Ferry Island. And then it was time to come back to Saskatoon. So I grabbed the log and put it in the rowboat that I took back to the art camp. And just before I put it into my car, I took a couple of photos of it. But of course, the photos were at a different vantage point from from the painting. And I got the log back to Saskatoon and brought it into the house, complete with ants and all that. And then all the greenery that was growing on it died within a matter of, I don't know, 2 or 3 days. And so I ended up having to improvise a lot with this painting. I would refer to the photos, but I was also referring to the real life log. And then when I finally was done with the log, I threw it in the front yard, and within a year we had wild strawberries in our front yard from the log. But I was pleased with how it turned out. I guess as an epilogue to the story, Ernie's daughter, Dagan, is a mentor. And so I quite often take my work and run it past Dagan. And she really liked this piece. And then for Dagan's birthday, her son, Tonal, bought this painting and gave it to Dagan. So now it's resting on the piano at Dagan's house as if it were sheet music.
Oh, nice.
Every time I'm over at Dagan's, I take a look at it and happy with it.
Yeah, it's a great name for your a piece of work as well as epilogue. You know, it's like it'd be a great name for a piece of work like that, epilogue.
Yeah, I actually call this microcosm because it had so much growing on it.
Yeah. Well, you know, the scale changes. It feels like it could be on the side of a cliff wall. It has a close-up of something grander than a log laying horizontally. Like knowing, well, the birch bark pieces on strikes on the bark on the left are vertical. In a bark, they're normally horizontal. But other than that, it could be just a really good close-up of a huge tree in itself, right? It's just a snippet of life. But, you know, there's so much, and you realize how sensitive a lot of those trees are. When you take it out of its environment, certain things die off. But then, like you said, when you put it back into another environment, it absorbs moisture and life comes back to it in its sense. And it's strange though that the wild strawberries come back up. That'd be kind of a great find to have that happen with something. But I guess the understanding, and like you're a bit of a naturalist that way, to understand that one life form feeds the next life form. So like a painting with the wild strawberries would have been really a neat thing to see as well in the series, kind of a feeling. So that you're just showing sort of like, I think I remember seeing some Ernie once where there was a decaying stump and then another small tree growing out of the new growth growing out of the top of the stump. And so you really get a feeling of old and new, you know, and new growth from something. But I think we're always looking for things in our work to refresh our invigoration, you know, into the subject matter, especially when you paint similar things over. You see things over and over again, and they're sort of still lifelike in a way, and I think that's got lots of merit. I mean, I think sharing this with a lot of people, not just botanists but other people, to understand that we have a precious thing to record some of these things as artists as well, and find the stories that are behind them a little bit. Go into this one here. So this one feels a little on the cooler side. The other ones were kind of a lot of warmer palette. Can you talk to this one a little bit of what precipitated this part, this silvery feeling to the birch?
Yeah, it's a couple of older birch trees, and certainly the tree on the right-hand side was almost monochromatic. There wasn't a lot of color, whereas the one on the left with the the peeling bark, it had more color going on with it. And to me, they looked like a couple old lovers. So that's the name of it, Old Lovers. But again, there's so much texture and subtle changes in color from one tree to the other. And yeah, to me, they have personality, and each tree has personality.
Yeah. No, I love the torn part where that warm color that's been brought in on that the tree on the left, and it's like opening up a little bit, and it's really the only real snap of real, sienna color that's in that page, and it really draws your eye to that, and the difference between these two. And it's great that you called it that. I mean, you do get that feeling that they've been connected for a long, long time, and responding to each other in the growth of these two trees. Yeah, it's I love having these stories because I see lots of things in different things, and I hope people do as well. And when they look at these works and understand the individuality of something that's so similar, sort of like looking at a still life, and you can look at 20 different still lives of the same subject, but artists interpret them differently, and finding the story behind each one. Why is that different? Why is it, the big why questions all the time? And I think it's simple, but boy, has it got some nice textures, and it's a little on the softer side than your other ones, and it's just a different response piece. But that little window of sienna bark is, it snaps up this page. It adds a different, nice little focus, and nicely positioned. It's very abstract looking piece. Probably one of your more abstract pieces, Cam, of a high realism artist as well. I think it's, I think even the artists like Bateman would always say that his work was very abstract. Especially in design, and that kind of holds the whole page together, is the design aspects and in doing things. Here we go. This is a difficult composition to pull off. I mean, when you look at, you have five, I think there's 5 projectiles like sticking up, right? It's graphically pointed down onto one pressure point down at the bottom of the page. But I love how you've done it, because the trees are not all the same. They're all at different kind of size, life forms, and they are very abstract. And if you squint at it, you can see these nice slices that divide the page up. I think that's one of the first things that attracts me to that is you've got a bit of a gray background in the background on this one though too.
Yeah, what the story behind this one, I was up at Kenderdine Campus at Emma Lake, and I had a cabin, and it was raining, and it was raining again. And so finally, and I'm looking out the window, and this is staring at me and saying, paint me, paint me. So, yeah, that's what I ended up doing, is basically from my cabin, looking out the window, there was this group of paper birch, and it was sort of gray and dismal as I was painting this. And so I decided, well, I'm going to throw some color on the background for this one, and just try to convey, the fact that it was raining. And so I call it Rainy Day. But
it changes the light. It changes the light quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like when it's dismal and gray, it changes the light on the tree as well. I can see.
Yeah.
That.
It's more subdued, for sure.
Yeah.
But again, each tree has its own sort of personality, and I try to capture that as well.
Yeah, no, you did. And I think, we're seeing young ones and middle age, that there's some things happening there in the composition that, it works out. It works out well. I think it's, when you paint, you're not painting the whole tree, you're painting snippets of a tree. So that's the thing. We're looking at, you start painting a vertical birch tree, and everything is long vertical pieces of paper. Where most of your works are they horizontal? Most of the works that you work on?
It varies. Yeah, it varies a lot. I think probably more vertical than horizontal, but when you're doing groups of trees, yeah, horizontal works better.
Yeah, it's yeah. Here's a nice, yeah. This one really, there's a lot of, beautiful light that's striking in and out of this tree, a little bit of this greeny gray, and the feeling. This one has a lot of oomph to it. I mean, part of it's a beautiful silhouette edges of them. They're unique. And it has this torn edges that birch can give you. And I think it's a great challenge for another artist to try and do this. But for a person wanting your work, understanding that you could look at this picture for a long time and find something different in it every morning, every day. Now, most of your work, is it under glass? Like, is usually glazed most of your pieces?
Yes. Yeah. One of the most difficult things with painting is when is a painting finished? And I've come to the realization that watercolor paintings are finished when they're behind glass.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm tempted to go back again and again and again, and it's like enough. And I don't want to overwork a piece, but so yeah, that decision, okay, it's finished. It's so difficult.
Yeah, I've had pieces on my easel for sometimes a long time, and if you've been painting other things for a while, do you find it difficult sometimes to go back to the previous painting and try and work on it? Your mind's at a different mindset when you're painting, or does it
well, you might see something that you didn't see before. So but I don't typically do that. I usually, I'll focus on one painting at a time. But I will go back, sometimes I'll just set it aside for a few days and then come back and finish it. But yeah, typically I'm anal retentive. I like to do things one project at a time.
Okay, so you don't have a number of paintings on the go at any one time. You do one, finish it, and move on to the next one?
Yes. Yeah.
No, I admire you. I got like 12 started, and you kind of bounce back and forth, and you do different things, and you think, oh, some you just turn face down on the table, and you don't come back to it at all for a long time. But yeah, no, it's great that you're able to finish a piece and from front to end, because I think, yeah, I admire you for that part. I just I tend to, I'll get a block somewhere, you'll paint for a while. Sometimes magically they all happen at one sitting. Plein air, a lot of times they're just done and you move on.
Yeah.
But a longer painting in the studio is just that, a longer painting in the studio. They take a while to conceive, build. They tend to be larger pieces. So how big was this piece be? Is this
this is probably about 18 inches height, and I'm going to guess around 8 inches width. But yeah, my medium-sized paintings typically are, in the 12 inches by 18 inches.
Right. Okay. Okay, this one here, different way of looking at it. Different color palette. These ones are different. Just feels a little, they're a little warmer light, maybe an afternoon light that you've been painting on this one a little bit more. Yeah, it has a, yeah.
Yeah, again, this is on Ferry Island, and I started it off plein air and then finished it in the studio. It was in a sunny location. Right. And I think that's reflected in the colors. So again, I think each tree has a personality. The tree on the right reminds me of a bass player.
Okay.
Yeah, and
so it's a trio, is what you.
That's the name of it. Actually, is trio. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, you can feel the response. I mean, it's funny how you take certain shapes and the sizes and, curving away and in and out, and they have, I don't know what it is with it, a bit of a human aspect to them. I think you respond to pieces. They don't become birches anymore. They become something else. It sounds a little weird to say that, but there's a response thing between the two other birches leaning away and the one that, like you said, is the strength on the right. There is this conversation, one leaning away, one leaning in. I mean, as a person, you just look at things as to why is it uniquely different than something else. But this is a lovely piece. Is this like a full sheet, this one, or?
No, this is again around 12 inches height by 18 inches width.
Okay, so basically about a half sheet.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I love this feeling. I mean, there's the topography that's on the one on the right here, where where it's it feels like there's this landform that's growing up the left side of the tree, and you can see that little shelf fungus that's laying down about 3/4 of the way down the tree, and it's a nice stopping point. Like, it's just this little rest for your eye, for you go through all this stuff that your mind is trying to sort out, and running up and down the tree, and your mind's getting excited about these curls, and then there's this shelf fungus that's sitting by itself on the tree. Your eye stops, and you just rest on that little platform for a bit. Then away you go again, and you jump over to the other tree, and your eye runs up and down the tree like an ant, just trying to discover those different curls. I can see you painting this for hours, for sure. I just, yeah. Now, this one's probably got the most color than your other pieces in the background. For you, that's a brave thing. I can see that.
Yeah. Again, I'm not sure that the wash on the background really contributes. But anyway, yeah, this is a stump that was on Ferry Island, and it was very close to where I was doing a lot of my painting. And I was looking at this year after year, and I did some studies of it, smaller, 4x6 or so. This is full size. This is 20 by 30 inches.
Okay. Wow.
And it's got a lot of stuff going on it. And to me, this stump was, how can I put it? It had a spirit, and I almost came to worship this stump. So I in the end, I called it Shaman. And so I did some studies, and then I did this one full size. There is a lot of detail in this painting, which you don't really see when you look at the whole thing. But if you zoom in on parts of it, you'll see, there is a lot of detail. And again, I'd probably spend 500 hours, I don't know, hundreds of hours on painting this, but I get so immersed, and it becomes meditative for me to focus on a painting and forget about everything else.
Is it hard for you to sell them and get rid of them? They become part of your family?
Well, I have a lot of paintings sitting in my studio, and right now I don't have a gallery representing me. I have in the past. I've had some good experiences, and but right now I don't have a gallery, and I'm terrible at marketing. I'd rather do painting.
Yeah.
But this image here is of a tree, again, on Ferry Island. I called it Sentinel. It was at a point where the path going around the island split. And it was sort of like overseeing the people coming onto the island. And this was done plein air. And I do find I tend to be looser when I'm painting plein air. When I get into the studio, I sort of became more anal retentive. But part of it is painting outside, and the light is always changing, which is a big challenge. So this one, I did it on Ferry Island, and I don't know if I might have touched it up in the studio, but I do find I'm looser when I'm doing plein air.
Yeah, no, for sure. You have to work around the conditions that you are fighting bugs and mosquitoes and different things as well, and you're trying to work. It dries quick too outside, and there's a lot of heat and sun, and your washes can dry up on you really quick in watercolor. Well, Cam, our time's gone a little bit by here. We had I wish we could talk more about your work, but I think we can always have you back again. I don't know if David's going to join us here, if he can, but he had some sound issues, but there he is there. You're back?
Yes. Well, I thought I'd come on to do some marketing. So
yeah, there you go. Perfect.
So Cam, if somebody wanted to purchase one of your paintings, what sort of price bracket would that be in?
Well, size matters. So the smaller paintings, sort of 4x6, I base it on a per square inch formula. So the small paintings I'll let go for around $150 Canadian. The medium-sized paintings I'll let go for around, I don't know, $600, $700, plus framing, okay, because framing has become so expensive. And then the bigger pieces that take, 500 hours, I'll let go for, say, 2,500. So, I'm getting a good, well, $5 an hour. But, I used to say before I retired, I would say, I have a day job to pay for my painting habit. I'm not making enough money to live on through my painting. And, but for a while, I was doing digital reproductions of my paintings, so it became more affordable. But I've stopped doing that now. So.
Well, that's great. We had a great conversation. I appreciate you spending the time with us this morning and telling us about your exploits. You probably just can't wait to get back up to Ferry Island again in the spring. Get some new works going, and I think it's always invigorating to do that. And thanks for hosting us again, David. Again, I appreciate.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure that people can find Cam through Artists in Canada. I think we'll post a link as well.
Yeah, his link is there, and you can find his work and get a hold of him. No problem at all. And if not, just reach out to me, and I can connect you for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'd like to thank everybody who's been watching today, and if you want to watch the absolute plethora of interviews that Paul has done over the last 4 years, there's a walk-in cupboard full of artists that you could just choose one and sit down and relax to. But in order to do that, it's always best to like and subscribe so you can get to the playlists a lot quicker. And that's it for today, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank everybody else who's been watching for another edition of Canadian Art Today. Bye-bye.
Bye now.